March 28th, 2008, Southern Afghanistan. Special Forces Operational Detachment Alpha 392 departed Kandahar Airfield in southern Afghanistan under the cover of darkness on the roughly 100-kilometer trip to Forward Operating Base Robinson. In the 4 months since their arrival in country, 3 U.S. soldiers had been killed and 3 more wounded by improvised explosive device attacks, with the team discovering 55 IEDs. Minutes into their mission, they encountered number 56. The catastrophic blast from the IED was so large that it threw the 15-ton, supposedly indestructible mine-resistant vehicle 50 meters before coming to rest on its side, facing the opposite direction of travel. The driver and one of the rear passengers died instantly. Another crew member was unconscious. The 4th suffered a broken back. Sergeant First Class Chuck Ritter hung suspended by his seatbelt with a broken nose, jaw, shoulder, and ribs. His skull was fractured in 7 places. His face, chin, and leg were gashed open. The right side of his body was peppered with lacerations. Within 10 days, he was in the United States, beginning the long road to recovery. 2 years later, Ritter conspired to redeploy with his team while not yet fully recovered. The battalion command sergeant major, recognizing his need for more rehabilitation, pulled him from the team and sent him back home, where he spent the next 2 years rehabilitating his wounded body, including 17 surgeries, facial reconstruction, and implants throughout his skull. In October 2012, Ritter again took charge of a Special Forces team, and 7 months later he was riding the tail of a Chinook helicopter into a Taliban stronghold in Bedro Valley, Kapisa in northeast Afghanistan, a virtual hornet's nest waiting to be kicked. The team and a company of Afghan Army commandos was part of Operation Mountain Condor 3, the 88-man force expected to face an estimated 600 enemy fighters. Landing in the valley around 10 p.m., the team moved west towards objective. Navigating the labyrinth of walls and irrigation ditches, the force, which was supported by AC-130 gunships and AH-64 Apache helicopters, moved unopposed through the valley, arriving at their objective around 6 a.m. Establishing themselves in 2 compounds barely suitable for command and control, they prepared alternating patrols to seek out the enemy, unaware that the enemy was within hand grenade range from the first patrol set out. As dawn came, the valley erupted. Over the next 3 hours, the ODA and the Afghan commandos played a lethal game of cat and mouse with the enemy. Groups of Taliban fighters massed together to attack friendly positions, only to be killed or scattered by close air support. Buildings in the surrounding area were assaulted and cleared, only to be reoccupied when the small force moved to clear a different location. At one point, Ritter took an element to flank an enemy ambush that had been identified some 300 meters away, only to be engaged by an ambush 50 meters away. While maneuvering against the near ambush, one of the Afghan commandos was struck. With air support temporarily out of the fight, Ritter and 4 commandos moved to recover the casualty. Ritter killed 2 enemy fighters and silenced a PKM heavy machine gun with his grenade. As the Afghan soldiers began to drag the casualty to safety, the PKM machine gun started firing. Sure of where the machine gun was positioned, Ritter's attempt to take out the gunner was thwarted when the gun was turned directly on him. Ritter was struck by 3 7.62 millimeter rounds, 2 through his leg and 1 through his back, which destroyed his brachial nerve complex and perforated an artery. Still, he took a knee, demanded his weapon, and directed fire against the enemy, allowing the element to return to the command post. For the next 2 hours, the team fought to get Ritter evacuated, as he was bleeding internally. 11 units of blood and 2 surgeries later, Ritter was back in the United States. He was released from the hospital on a Friday and was back in the gym the following Monday. While recovering, he besieged his battalion commander with quick updates of his progress, and within 2 months, he returned to Afghanistan to join his team for the 5th time. November 11th, 2013. As a team sergeant of ODA 3335, Master Sergeant Ritter once again partnered with Afghan commandos for a quick reaction force mission to Kunduz in northern Afghanistan. Within hours, the ODA, with an additional 30 Afghan soldiers, boarded an Mi-17 helicopter for the short flight to secure a helicopter landing zone, which involved linking up with his Afghan company. As the ramp of the Mi-17 helicopter opened, Ritter heard a snap of incoming small arms fire. Disembarking the aircraft and being the first man off, he looked in vain for friendly forces, quickly determining they had not landed on their planned landing zone. Bounding across the open field into a hail of enemy heavy machine gun fire, the team maneuvered to engage with and destroy the enemy. But prior to reaching the cover and concealment, a 7.62 millimeter round tore through Ritter's hand, breaking his fingers, obliterating 2 of his knuckles, and shattering his metacarpal and perforating an artery. Ritter switched his weapon to his left hand and continued to fire. With the enemy machine gunner focused on his position, he turned his attention to the Joint Terminal Attack Air Controller at his side and quickly worked Fire's plan. In succession, Apache helicopters, AC-130 gunships, and F-16 fighters were brought to bear, and the Special Forces team and their commandos gained the upper hand. They linked up with the beleaguered Afghan force 1 kilometer away, and turning down an opportunity for medical evacuation, Ritter refused pain medication in order to remain alert, staying with the force as it cleared the area. For the next 3 hours, they methodically moved west, hunting down the fleeing enemy force. Now, Sergeant Major Chuck Ritter has combat rotations in Yemen, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria, totaling 12 combat rotations, mostly in Afghanistan. He holds Army Commendation Medals with V Device for Valor, the Bronze Star Medal with V Device for Valor, the Silver Star, and 3 Purple Hearts. Sergeant Major Chuck Ritter, welcome to Pineland Underground. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Major Tuttle. Thank you for having me.
We're also joined today by a good friend of mine, Major James Blackburn, and another good friend of mine, Sergeant Major Jimmy Dauteuil. Gents, thanks for joining us here in Pineland. Appreciate you guys' time today.
Glad to be here, Bobby. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Chuck, I wanted to ask you about your personal road to recovery. Talk to me and our listeners about you coming back from these injuries we described in the intro, getting back into the fight, and getting back to your team to continue to serve.
Before we cover that, right, because I've never actually told this story to anybody because it's hard, but I just want to say that although you just gave an intro on actions in combat, I think it's important to recognize that I personally don't think I'm some kind of badass because of my ability to recover. I think in this job we have the privilege and the honor to walk in the footsteps of giants, right? Like the people I've been able to serve with and have the privilege and honor to serve with that are far better and more badass than I could ever be. There's so many guys that I call my personal friends that are fully deserving of valor awards and above and beyond things that I have. Things get lost or people downgrade them or whatever. It's pretty awesome. You know, people like Ron Scher, right? Medal of Honor recipient from Charlie Company 3rd Battalion, who recently passed away after surviving a long fight with cancer, right? They gave him like 6 months to live. This guy, 3 years or something like that? Like incredible. Like this guy, like that just shows the type of person he was. Or, Matt Williams, who is he's about to be a CSM right now, and 3rd Special Force Group, guys like that. We get to serve with guys like that, or our friends that fell in combat, who I believe are people that I've always looked up to and I've tried to emulate, and that I can never be that awesome. So even though we're talking about this, I don't believe that makes me superior to any of that. But talking about the road to recovery, I think that goes back to, or really ties into the concept of having a positive attitude, right? Even on the ground, like we're talking about landing in Mi-17s, and I know the narrative that's published in RSOF Next is we landed on the wrong HLZ, but the reality is we landed on the correct HLZ that I planned. I'm the one that pushed for us to do that mission, and when we landed, for the second time I can remember in combat, I was actually scared when I got shot in the hand, and I was up against this berm, and it seemed like these guys were just concentrating on me, and I had the JTAC next to me, and the Apaches were on the wrong HLZ. That's why we landed. They called it, hey, the HLZ is clean, but it wasn't because they were on the wrong HLZ and they were on the wrong net. So my JTAC was freaking out, and for the second time, really the first time I can remember truly being scared, because the first time is through the lens of my old team leader, which I don't remember, but I was like, man, I planned this, and there's at least 4 to 5 fortified machine gun positions that have us in some kind of L-shaped ambush, and I don't see the people we're supposed to link up with. Like, it's going to be my fault that everybody died. But then I quickly snapped out of it. I was like, no, hell no. I'm a juggernaut. This detachment, we are juggernauts. And the J-Tech, his name was Wild Bill, he sat next to me. He tells a story that he was freaking out. He remembers me grabbing him with my bloody hand and telling him to calm down, and then running him through what I needed to happen. I remember getting on the radio and telling the captains, like, hey, I'm shot. I'm about to drop a lot of ordnance in your name. Just trust me with it, and we'll get this under control. But it was all because I was in a negative mindset for a second, and I was able to snap out of that and go into a positive mindset and realize that no matter what, we're going to end up on top. We're going to crush, and we're going to dominate that. I think that's really been the key to my recovery from all those different events. That, and I know, I've shared this with Jimmy a couple of times. Like, one of the real secrets to my recovery has been that cyber awareness training that what's the other one that we always talk about?
Did you come due with your cyber awareness training while you're being medevaced?
Actually, that did happen. I got a message that said that, hey, like, you got to keep bringing all this stuff. And I remember doing all your online training on Percocet's much more enjoyable. I've taken a lot of flack because I did conspire to go into a 2010 rotation where I wasn't fully recovered, and the battalion CSM pulled me aside and said, look, Chuck, I called your surgeon. He said, you still have X amount of surgeries to do, plus you have no front teeth. So that tells me you're not recovered. You're kind of BSing your way through this. And he banned me from deploying again until 2012. And I had to show him a memo from my psychologist and my surgeon because he actually cared and he wanted me to actually recover. And that was before Thor 3, right? Before the what we have available to us now for recovery. It took me a full 4 years without the assets we have. But then when I got shot in the back and I actually died on the operating table, I bled out. One of the reasons why we don't use Hexten anymore on the battlefield is because I was pumped full of Hexten, which increases your blood pressure. But when I got to the hospital in Bagram, they couldn't figure out why I kept crashing because my blood pressure was good. But the reality was I didn't have any more red blood cells. So I didn't have the ability to carry oxygen to my body. And I remember they wouldn't give me any more pain meds. So that first surgery they did when I was awake, and that kind of redefined my definition of pain right there. And then it popped open again at one point. I had to go back in there and do another surgery. But I just remember, that took me about 2 months to recover from. I wouldn't say fully recover. It took me a year to recover from it. 2 months later, I was back in combat. That was just that mindset of nothing's going to stop me from my goals, and even to my own, kind of demise at the time. I remember I called the CSM up, our group CSM, and I was on Percocet, maybe had a beer or two. He said, Chuck, you're not coming back to combat. Just stop. Like, nobody's for it. Nobody's going to prove it. You're not coming back here. And I said, hey, no, I am coming back. And, unless you put a guard at every civilian airport, like, I'm going to take a civilian flight in. I'm going to give myself some time in Germany, and I'm going to catch a medevac bird into the country. And he's like, you're not going to do that. Well, I did do that. And then when I landed, he was sitting there at the tarmac waiting for me. Him and the commander were really pissed off. He's like, look, man. He's like, you're here. You're obviously a testament to how Thor 3 works, but you're not going back to combat. Or you're going to your fire base, but you can't go on combat operations. But I still found myself out on combat missions. That was pretty cool. But that goes back to that mindset of, hey, this is my objective. This is what I'm going to do, and there's nothing that's going to stop me from doing it. And at the time, I was very proficient at my job, so I was able to get away with some of those things, in my opinion. Maybe not as proficient as I thought I was in my head, but in my head, I was like, damn, I'm pretty good. But that positive mindset of having that vision of what I wanted to achieve and knowing that nothing was going to stop me from getting there has always carried me through. The hand injury, getting shot in the hand, took a lot longer than expected. I didn't go back to that deployment like I wanted to. The reality is, like, I have no knuckle here. It blew up most of the bones in my hand, so none of these bones on the right side of my hand are my bones. But it works. It operates. But over the course of all this time, I recently just had a lower back fusion. That was my 30th surgery due to combat-related injuries.
30 surgeries.
30 surgeries, and I'm about to have probably the 31st. What you got, Jimmy?
Yeah, we're going to do that together.
Yeah, me and Jimmy are going to do some hip surgery together because we're both old and stupid. And the hip surgery is probably not due to combat-related injuries. It's probably just being ridiculous. But, 23 years in the military will do that to you. But, yeah, I'd say, like, the recovery is all about mindset. And, you read these stories of all these other guys that dominated injuries far superior to what I've been through. And it's always come down to, at some point in time in their head, they're like, nope, you're not going to feel sorry for me. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to conquer, and I'm going to come back out on top.
No, Chuck, hey, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's really heartening to dive into and really just kind of hear your personal testimonial of how you tackled that. Extremely impressive. Obviously, as we look, Jimmy and I and James, we come to work around giants on a daily basis. It's humbling to be able to work, around guys like yourself and other guys that you have led, Jimmy's led, James has led over in combat. And that's a testament to what Special Operations has done over the past 20 plus years, just in the global war on terror, but specifically being the element, the unit of choice for the American people overseas to get the job done. And having people like you gentlemen here is a true testament to that. The people we attract, the people we produce, and the people we get to be around. It's incredibly humbling.
At this point, sometimes, I don't consider myself an old guy, but I think in this profession somewhat long in the tooth. And what I see, I look around at peers and friends, and pretty much everyone's injured. It reminds me of the book Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield, talking about the Spartans and how each of them carried their shield slightly differently, or their wife knew how to tune their armor a specific way to account for the injuries they'd accumulated over the years. And at least nowadays we have human performance, and there's been a lot of lives lost in the regiment in the last 20 years of GWAT, and hopefully some real lessons learned, and the regiment's clearly investing to keep people as tuned up as possible through the human performance and the Thor 3 program. But that's the main thing that I see is, everyone's injured, whether it's a full-on medevac or, a training injury or what have you. A lot of us are headstrong, and that by nature we create injuries for ourselves. And then you just hope that guys, take advantage of the resources. And the only message I like to push on that is men literally died, and were significantly injured hard enough and significant enough to where they're no longer with the regiment and the brotherhood. And so whenever you get injured, whether it's a medevac or otherwise, and you're wondering that morning if you're hurting, whether or not you should go to Thor 3, well, the choice not to is almost an insult to the people that we lost, because they're the reason why the regiment has invested so heavily in those programs. So, I guess don't insult your brothers and go use the resources that we've learned to invest in, because that did not come naturally or easily. Those are funds that could be used for special projects or other cool gadgets, and yet they're used on us to make sure we can serve as long as possible. So if humans are more important than hardware, I think we're putting our money where our mouth is on that one.
Humans are more important than hardware. Soft truth. So true, James. So Chuck, tell me about that mindset as you go and you approach to speaking to our new students or just anybody throughout the non-commissioned officer academy. Talk to me about that message you bring to the table.
These guys are the future. I know, Jimmy and I have talked recently about some things, and one of the things that came up was like, maybe is this our regiment anymore? And the reality is it's always our regiment, but these guys are the future, right? Like, and we were all in their shoes at some point in time. But the future of the regiments with them, it's the guys coming out of BLC, right? It's our E6 is promoting to E7 at this point in time. I mean, we're almost relics, right? We've been kind of relegated to the position of former action guy almost permanently. And Jimmy gets to go back and be a command sergeant major here pretty soon. But for some of us, I mean, you're a former action guy. These guys aren't, man. They got their whole career of awesomeness in front of them, and they're going to do all the things that we did once upon a time. But I think when we're interfacing with students, we got to realize there's that what they call the curse of knowledge, or the knowledge gap, is where maybe we're at that that college level or that graduate level, but how long did it take us to get there? And when you're at that level, it's hard to sometimes fathom, man, how does somebody not know this stuff? You see it with your kids and stuff too. How does somebody not know not to pee on the toilet seat, right? It's just that, no, they got to be taught that, right? Because you didn't know it at one point in time either. But kind of putting yourself back to when you were in those, the shoes of where they're going through right now. And okay, back then I didn't know anything. It took me years to get to where I am today, and not talking to people to almost down to them. Just, hey, I remember when I was here. Here's some things. If I was in your position, I wish I would have known these things, and I would have been better for it.
I've been a fan of Chuck Ritter before Chuck Ritter knew who I was. I got some good advice very early on by my 18 Fox, who ended up becoming my company sergeant major. And it was like, hey, you see the guys that do the basics really well, are smart, articulate people, make them your friends, emulate them. Then you also see the guys that don't do that, that are on the opposite. Hey, stay as far away as you can, but within eye distance so you can see what they do. You can put that in your tool bag. You can recall that when you need to, but you're not going to make those same mistakes. So I basically forced Chuck to be my friend, whether he liked it or not. And then I was just so persistent at it that, he became my friend. But so, hey, Chuck, how about you describe your journey, your path as to how you became the man, the soldier you are today with your particular mindset?
Yeah, so that's a weird path, right? Most people don't anticipate when they hear it, and to be honest with you, I've never actually told this to anybody. I don't think so. This maybe be the first time where I can put it out there. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but so I was born in the Philippines of military parents. My mom was an officer in the Air Force. My dad was enlisted, and from what I understand, he made up to E9, and then back down to E6, and back up to E9 again.
It makes total sense.
Yeah. Right. So I was there at Clark Air Force Base for about 6 months. Grew up in Texas, and in East Texas.
God bless Texas.
There's all these stories about people that, when they were younger, they had to go through adversity and they persevered. They had broken homes and, abuse, whatever, and they overcame that and they became awesome, right? Well, I came from a pretty good home. I was pretty spoiled, in my opinion, and I really had to overcome myself. Like I pretty much sucked. When I was younger, my mom slept with a gun under her pillow because she was afraid of me. Criminal background up to felony charges on me, which I won't go into detail about. Did and sold drugs. Failed my first drug test for the military when I first tried to join in college. Well, before that, I had super bad grades. 1 year I skipped 110 days of class, which I don't even know how it's possible, but I did it.
That was high school or college?
That was high school. No, in college I failed bowling class, right? That's kind of where I had my mind shift, which, so I failed bowling class.
Couldn't get that turkey.
And then that's kind of where I realized when I went home, the day I realized I failed bowling class. I was like, I gotta shift something because I'm a pretty smart dude and I am screwing this up somehow. Ended up having to get letters from congressmen to join the Army because I failed my first drug test for meth. Joined the Army, basic training, I'd been working in my head at being good at the Army, but not physically, just in my head. So that first PT test, I scored 94 points out of 300 in all 3 events, which, I don't know if you can actually score that low. It's almost impossible, right? The whole
94 total
94
in
total.
all
Push-ups,
3 events.
sit-ups, and run, yeah.
So that would be a 94 out of 300 points.
Yeah.
So far less than 50%.
And 180 is the minimum standard, which is fairly easy, right? The whole, they say up front, like, you can walk, but it's not recommended.
So you walk.
I took that to heart. But I walked really slow because 24-minute 2 miles is what I had, right? I think it was like maybe 14 push-ups. I don't know, but it was pretty ridiculous. So if you look at my basic training
were you
picture,
trying though, or were you?
I mean, I thought I was trying. I was just dying.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I went from that. I went to Hawaii as an infantryman, and I'd already switched my mindset over to what I believe was a successful mindset after I'd failed bowling class and realized that if I stayed on my current path, I wasn't going to go anywhere and I'd probably just end up dead in my hometown, which is a small East Texas town. But it was a journey, and when I got to my first unit in Hawaii, I had people that really took me to the side and they mentored me. And when I graduated basic training at a 220 on my APFT, which I thought was amazing, right? But when I got to the unit, I quickly found out that was not amazing at all, and that if I didn't make a 270, that I wasn't going to go anywhere in life. But people took their time, to ensure that they invested in me, and then, now I'm in Special Forces, Sergeant Major with plenty of combat trips and awards.
Was that the first time kind of in your young life or career that somebody had put energy into you or the development of you?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, but it's the first time where I appreciated it and internalized it.
You recognized, yeah.
And I think that's pretty,
absolutely.
That's pretty key. You can invest your time in all kinds of people, but unless they really want to take that and run with it and take that seriously, then you're not going to make an impact, right? And even for yourself, I think the delta for me was when I failed bowling class and realized that if I don't do something, I'm going to just end up in jail, and I'm not going anywhere. Because actually I kicked out of my house. I had to move to Alaska for a couple months, and there's a whole backstory to that. But it got pretty crazy. But then
so you were not an exemplary
no
individual, citizen coming into the U.S. Army.
No, my parents had a bet. Like, my mom bet that I would not pass basic training. There's no way I was going to pass basic training. My dad said, well, maybe I'll take that bet. And they bet $20. Obviously, my dad won, but even when I graduated basic, they both came to me. I was like, "Hey, look, the fact that you graduated basic training is almost unbelievable. It's, we thought you were for sure destined for jail. So, congratulations."
Wow.
Yeah.
Which this is kind of ironic, because Chuck has a reputation in third group at being one of the smartest sergeant majors and COs within the regiment. So, to me, to hear all this is very, very.
So you never heard this before, right?
No, I've not.
Yeah,
No.
Yeah, so nobody really knows that. Some people know that, but it's not something you put out there, right?
Is it tough for you to talk about, or is that again part of the story of really how you can light something internally, how you can ignite yourself, how you can find drive and surround yourself with good people?
I find it hard to talk about myself anyway.
Sure.
I find it hard to tell stories, and which is weird because a lot of people think that I have this big social media presence. And the reality is, I just used that as a selling tool for when I was a team sergeant for my team.
But you do, unbeknownst to you, because your video, like the video of you getting shot, but I think your 18 Delta had the GoPro on, that's all over social media and on random military, army, special operations social media pages of this guy going out with his Afghan partners, and then you're running back in, and next thing you know, it's like chaos, because you just hear on the radio, "Hey, Zulu's down," you hear panic.
Yeah.
So it's actually a pretty cool video. Probably not cool when you're living it, but it shows the realities of what war really is. But again, no accolades or recognition of you.
Yeah, it's just weird. It feels weird. Like, it feels weird telling the stories because you feel like you're, I don't know, like boistering. At some point in time, we're going to retire and we're going to market ourselves if we want to make it in the civilian world. But, like, to me, it's like, what's the point in the military world? I'm here. This is my rank. This is my job. This is what I'm supposed to do. If I can do things that sell my team or what I'm doing and use those with that, and that's cool. But selling yourself for what? Like, we can't, like me and you, we can't make E10, right? It would take...
No, cannot.
Like, we would have to do something pretty egregious to get fired too, right? So it's pretty safe. Like,
Fair.
Being E9 has a lot of downsides. Once you make E9, like me and Jimmy have talked about this a lot, people just automatically think that, you're there for your career and you're a company person, and you're too far removed and you have these ulterior motives. I mean, that is real. When you make E9, like, you have to fight against it. All you care about is Army values, haircuts, uniforms, cyber awareness training. And you have to fight against that urge, right? It's like the dark side. But I know Jimmy talks about, he's always texting me like, "Look, man, I don't know how to fight this urge to just yell at these people for not having their boots bloused properly." But
As someone that's follically challenged, I encourage guys to grow out that beautiful long mane as long as they keep it within the regs. That's all.
Well, I think what we're talking about here, if you guys would want to kind of dive into it a little bit, is maybe, Chuck, you and I were talking that it's never cool to be ignorant.
yeah.
I think that I'd love to have you unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, so
Talk to me.
that's something that I like to say a lot. It's never cool to be ignorant because, I can't think of a time in my life where I've talked to another individual and I figure out, okay, this person doesn't know what he's talking about, and then at the end of it, I'm like, "Hey, man, I really want to thank you for just not knowing what you're talking about, for being ignorant. That's awesome. You should continue that in life, right? Like, that just doesn't happen, right? You don't. Whenever you come across that way to somebody, you've lost credibility, and you're probably not going to get that back. And what it really means, we talk about something like, continuing education, and most people just associate that with college, right? And I think that's off. No, that continuing education is everything. If you look right here on this first page of my notebook right here, actually it's the second page, key task, do 2 hours of doctrinal reading every week. It's not that I enjoy it, right?
Doctrinal reading.
Doctrinal reading,
So
right?
opening up a Army doctrine manual publication and reading through it.
And yeah, so education is, hey, read books, do audiobooks, read the things that pertain to your job, and be smart on those. But not just read it and shelve it, but think about it. Like, what does that mean? What do these principles actually mean to my job, and how can I apply those? Especially when it comes to things you have to know about. Like, recently I had to read the manual that talks about academic financial requirements, or what you do for money in an academic institution. I didn't enjoy reading that at all. I had to read it like 4 times to actually understand it. But it allowed me to come up with my long-range budget for the academy, and it's written to a point where I would say that, test me, like, poke holes in this of why I'm saying I need this much money. But because I took the time to learn the rules, I can use them to my advantage, right? Because on top of, it's never okay to be, or it's never cool to be ignorant. If you want to win any game, if you want to win and dominate any game in life, chess, Monopoly, you first have to know the rules of the game. And once you learn the rules of the game, then you can dominate the game. But you can't show up to a game and just be like, well, this is what I think the game should be, and I don't know the rules. You're just going to piss everybody off, right? You're not going to win.
I think a common misconception of special operations, you look at all the different entities out there, SEALs, Marine Special Operations, Raiders, Rangers, Green Berets, Army Special Operations. What I'm getting at is there's the tendency to think that people wing it and that we collectively at Special Operations are good at just making it up or winging it on the fly. And that's a common misconception because just as Chuck is explaining here, knowing the rules, being completely well-read and savvy on what those rules, publications, what that doctrine really says, allows us to play by the rules, use that to our advantage, and then to leverage that if somebody or people or units aren't using that in the right way. And you got any examples of that?
Well, yeah, so...
I actually do, of Chuck. So I'll again speak about Chuck as I'm gazing at him from afar. So I was a first sergeant over at 3rd Group. Chuck's a pretty big deal. I didn't really know Chuck, but you started up the 3 shop. So again, I'm trying to get Chuck to be my friend. We had a couple conversations about this in particular, about how, hey, just read. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like you said. It doesn't have to be like doctrine.
It's just being informed, right?
Yeah.
It's being informed on everything and understanding exactly how the structure of the organization works.
Absolutely. And honestly, at the time, I thought I was pretty well read, and then I got schooled pretty hard by all the enablers within HHC because they knew I didn't know the rules. So I spent a lot of time reading it. But fast forward a little bit. So Chuck's now a company sergeant major. So just a couple years later, Chuck's a company sergeant major. He is in Syria. I get an email from, I believe it was the group S3 sergeant major at the time. And he pushed it out to a few folks that he trusted, and it was an email from Chuck to this lieutenant colonel, correct?
Or colonel, yeah.
Colonel, sorry. The gist of it was this colonel was telling Chuck and his company commander how to manipulate their forces on the battlefield. And Chuck replied with the definition of each, and then with the mission statement that they were under, that they weren't operationally controlled, or is it tech?
I was like, hey, we said, hey, sir, these guys are take on to us, and this is what the definition of these are, and this is why this isn't going to happen. It was very professional.
It was very professional, but there was a nice bit of swagger to the email, just letting him know that he didn't know what he was talking about, and you did. And so what happened was you got to do what you wanted to do because you knew the rules to the game. And so I took that to heart after I read that, and I used that as well when I was company sergeant major. I actually sat down with Chuck before I took over, and we talked a lot about this again, and that was one of his big selling points is hey, know the rules of the game, aka doctrine, or the policies, because you'll be able to use that in a manner that best fits what your mission is and what you're trying to do within your company. So I did that a lot, and it was all because of, Chuck, really.
No, that's absolutely fantastic. Again, so anytime a special operations unit, we deploy in smaller entities compared to the regular Army, the regular force. So we get, we call it sliced off kind of, whether it's a company, which is 6, special forces teams, or just a handful of special forces, ODAs or teams. And so that relationship or control with your higher headquarters is extremely important because you have to know and understand what resources they provide you can ask for, but also what they can direct you to do to support the overall mission. And so that's, a relationship between kind of subordinate and superior, and being able to best understand that is huge for teams because you put a 12-person Green Beret detachment on the ground.
Who were all trained in cyber awareness. They did their yearly training.
That's extremely important for recognition of what they can do in an entire region of, say Afghanistan. You work for higher headquarters or bosses, if you will. That's huge, though. That's absolutely huge. Any other examples of that?
We're talking about cyber awareness training right now, right?
Mine just expired. I have to do that.
Relevancy is one of those things that lately I've been trying to wrap my head around a little bit more, but you see a lot of our kind become irrelevant pretty quickly because relevancy it's what's applicable to right now, right? And once you just start trying to rest on your laurels of what you did in the past or anything that you might accomplish back then, like, it doesn't matter. Like, what's on my uniform in my wallet right now, it doesn't matter, right? What I did yesterday doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the Special Forces tab doesn't matter. It doesn't endow any of us with anything. The only thing it gives us is the privilege to work in the job that we're in and show up to work every day and earn the right to wear it every single day. The only thing that matters is what are you bringing to the table right now today? Like, how are you bettering yourself, the people around you, and your organization today? And I think the organization is a key one, right? A lot of people get focused on the little bubble, but the organization as a whole, if you're bought in and you really take pride in what that is what are you doing every day for that? Like, you earn your relevance every day you come in. Every day you walk the door and come to work, like, you're not entitled to anything but the right to come in and earn it every day. And I think it's pretty important. I think we lose it a lot of times because there's pride, right? Hey, I have some confidence. I can take pride in myself or what somebody else does. But once you multiply that to the point to where it's extravagant, it becomes hubris, right? And I think a lot of guys get into that mindset of oh man, I've earned it, or I've arrived, or I've done these things, so I deserve this. Like, that's not the way it works. Like, relevancy can say it's relevancy and competency are like a fart in the wind, right? It's like it blows and then it's gone, right? It's boom, and it's hard to get it back once you lose it.
So that message of continue to earn it every day. You've gotten your foot in the door. You're part of the organization, but you still have to go earn it from the seasoned, experienced people who've deployed to combat for the last 20 years. And with our officers, our brand new captains, and the newest graduates, you're expected to bring the latest and greatest from what we're teaching here at the institution. And so that's huge because the expectations and the stakes are so high. You walk into that, say, Special Forces team room as a brand new captain, you are automatically in command. You haven't done anything yet in special operations yet, but you are the commander. And so knowing when to take advice and how to seek and really pull that advice from your people, your seasoned individuals, knowing how to continue to earn it and stay humble, and to mold them to ensure that they know how to take advice.
Make sure
and
they
criticism.
Continue to educate, break that ego, right? Because generally most officers, they only fail when they start believing in their own hype and their ego. It's too bad. Like,
sure.
if you can keep that in check, you're really smart, good officers, like, those guys will be awesome. Like, I'm sure you got a story or two about that. But
I was just going to say, like, I feel like if a captain fails on an ODA, so a detachment leader fails, it's the team's fault. More specifically, the team sergeant's fault, because they allowed that to happen. Mm-hmm. To go back to what you're saying, Bobby, like, for me, for the enlisted 18 series that came in, the new guys, I asked 3 things out of them. Hey, they're physically fit, they're proficient in their MOS, and they got a positive mindset. That's really it, because they're going to learn a lot. Those first 2 years, it's going to be a very fast-paced job, and on a good team, they're going to love every minute of it. But for the captain, it's different. They, like you said, they have to come in and be the commander. They're going to go off to some random place, and then they're talking with the locals. They're the face of the team.
They're the face of the American people.
Yeah, you're right.
Face of the U.S. government.
You're absolutely right, and that's tough. And so I spent a lot of time as a company sergeant major, and really a team sergeant with my team leaders. And as a company sergeant major, I let them know, like, hey, they can come in and run any idea by me. There's no questions asked. There's no real stupid question, because a lot of times, like, they were a little bit timid to go into that company commander, that major's office, and pitch this idea, not knowing if it was going with their priorities, right? Yeah. So who best knows the commander's priorities? Their senior enlisted advisor, right? So they'd come in, the door would shut, and then they'd pitch their idea. Sometimes it was like, hey, I just need you to back me on this one. And sometimes it was, hey, do you think this is relevant? And I encouraged it. And honestly, not to say that this was anything on me, but the captains that did the best within my company were the ones that were constantly coming down and talk to myself and the warrant.
Yep.
The company warrant
so
officer.
the most tenured people in that company, or in the entire unit. So I mean, I think that really kind of hits on the overall theme right there was it's never cool to be ignorant, and that's what Chuck Ritter just stated.
There's one more thing, so it's never
Go.
cool. As an officer, you talked about how an officer is the face of the team, right? Like one of the things, like an officer comes to me, the first thing I do is I give him a counseling statement, which is weird because of the officer. It's like, look, you got two options with your hair. It can either be fabulous or you got to shave it, right? And that's it. That's the two. Because you're the face of the team, right? And I think that's important because that sets the standard right there of what's expected.
You gotta look the part. Look the part.
You gotta look the part, right? Because you can't just go in there with it. Yeah.
Chuck, I gotta ask, how many captains came in and had better hair than you?
Most of them probably. I don't know. I've had
Mike and Ben did.
I had Mike Salazar and Ben
Ben
Ewers, and they
Ritter,
both
yeah.
still to this day have just
Phenomenal hair.
phenomenal hair. It's aggravating, and I think that does, like, when you do have phenomenal hair as an officer, that plays into you having hubris, and because like I'm a really good looking man, like I can do no harm right here, and like so
You turn down that male model job.
yeah, turn down that male model job. It happens, right?
It does.
I think to boil it down to a few of the things we're hitting on right here is always continue to seek that personal betterment and education. Mm-hmm. You're always looking at opportunities to get better in your profession. You're never gonna be the smartest person in the room. If you are, you're absolutely in the wrong room. Again, in special operations, we attract critical thinkers. We teach and train people how to think, not what to think, but how to think. And then we allow them to look at the vast amount of information that we give them and then kind of sort through to find clarity and form those opinions of how they're going to tackle mission sets. Surrounding yourself with good people and with expertise, that's, I think Jimmy's hit on that is, the best people and the most experienced people, in that Special Forces company, for example, are going to be that company sergeant major and the warrant officer, and they're going to have the most time there. Go talk to them, obviously. That's the people you want to surround yourself with. And then, of course, with good people on your detachment, your teams. In order to foster a great team, you got to surround yourself with great people. Question things, being cynical. As critical thinkers, we look for that. As resistance experts, we really do look for that. And we train people on how to do that, how to be resistance experts. And that's almost like the graduate school mindset of asking why. Why and how? Why are we doing this? Does that make sense? Question things, because if we're doing it because it's been done forever, well, maybe there's more efficient or better or more capable way of tackling that objective, that mission set, that problem, whatever that might be. So really, again, that graduate school mindset, using doctrine and policy or the rules to your advantage, and then empowering your people. In special operations, again, we ask our people to go out to remote parts of the world and do activities on behalf of our nation in U.S., in the matter of U.S. interests. So empowering our people. If we don't know exactly what right looks like, but you've developed, trained, selected these incredible people and sending them out in the teams, small teams, to go out and do what's best on behalf of our nation. That's really what I'm getting at here. And then again, it's never cool to be ignorant. Always looking to better yourself.
That's never. You never sit across from somebody like, man, I'm really glad you don't know what you're talking about. That's awesome. Or you sit across from somebody and you're like, you know what, man, your negative attitude is impressive. You want to come over here and work for me? Like, no, that never happens either, right? It's those two things. When you combine them, it's the perfect storm.
Talk to me about attitude then. So you two are, sergeants majors, really at the pinnacle and that highest level in the non-commissioned officer corps, which is a huge feat within special operations. Jimmy, you're going back to take a battalion, 1st Battalion, 3rd Group next summer. Attitude. How do you tell people, or how do you recruit people, or tell them you're looking for the right attitude? What is it you actually seek for in those Green Berets, in those special operations members? And how do you identify the attitude you want to bring into your organization?
If you truly believe that, that no matter what, I'm going to face obstacles, but I'm going to persevere and conquer, and no matter what stands in my way, I'm going to stand up, and this is kind of a hate breed quote, like, I'm going to wipe the spit off my face, I'm going to stand up, and I'm going to persevere, right?
and nothing's going to stop me no matter what. And I've kind of always had that mindset, but then you combine that with being positive about things, right? Like no matter where you are, suffering through something by yourself or with a team is always going to equate to you coming out on the backside as better, no matter what it is. And there's a lot of things like we joined the Army. If you didn't join the Army realizing you're going to be doing some dumb stuff, then you didn't watch some war movies. Like, it's what we do. It's like going to Pizza Hut and in a month in, like, man, I got to wash dishes and make pizza? This is dumb, right? Like, no, like, okay, then get out. Like, you knew what you were getting into. And there's plenty of dumb things we do in the Army, right? But it affords you the opportunity to go do incredible things that nobody will ever get to do. All the countries we've been to and the things we've actually been able to build, the enduring systems we've been able to build in countries, all over the world is just, to me, you can't, like a lot of people, oh, well, I wasn't on a combat operation. And okay, but like you built these things that have endured for a decade. That's pretty awesome. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool. You get to do things that most people would have to pay money for. Like I feel bad sometimes. Like, man, like I get paid to do the stuff that we get to do. That's pretty crazy. People literally go pay like $500 to go do GoRuck events, and we get paid to do the same thing in foreign countries. I don't know. I just think that the power of being positive is incredible. And if you become that negative cancer, like you don't want to be that guy, and you got to root that stuff out in your team. Like, hey guys, we can complain about things, but then at the end of the day, like there's some things we can't change. And you got to put that in your mind. There's some things that I volunteered for in the Army that I can't change. Like I know I'm going to do cyber awareness every year and all this crap that I don't really, personally value, but I got to do it because it's in the back of AR-350-1. So you're going to knock it out, but that allows you to do other stuff that you want to do. So you figure out what can you actually affect and what can you not affect. If you can't affect it, then don't waste time complaining about it because you're just wasting energy. Spend your time towards the things you can affect and have a positive impact on, and do the things that you don't really agree with. But spend the minimum amount of time and energy on those. And complain about them a little bit, but don't make it this cycle to where you're just being this cancer to everybody around you. And you can find goodness in almost everything you got to do, but that allows you to do the things that are just incredibly, like, in my military career, like, I feel like I've been able to do things that, when I think back on them, it's unbelievable, right? If there's younger guys out here in the Q course listening to this, like, the things you get to do in your career are just unbelievable. It's hard to discuss and tell people about them because sometimes you don't even believe them yourself. Sometimes, like, yeah, I accomplished that. That's awesome. It's almost like somebody told me that it's almost like you were an entrepreneur and you just did startups that were successful over and over and over again. That's real, right? Because these things cost a lot of money that we start up in these countries, but they're enduring. And to this day, I get people from these other countries. They're always messaging me like, "Hey, man, like this is something that you guys built." I think that's awesome.
So I wanted to ask though. So you talked. I mean, you were a degenerate.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that compliment, sir.
Or he said that with love, though.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least you clearly from your background story lacked the drive, the motivation. You talk about failing bowling class. You had the realization. Was that overnight? Was that like a light switch? That implementation or that spark? Did that happen over a series of events? Like how did that occur for you? Because I can you look at people out in the world today. Maybe they just need a spark to light that fire within. What was that like for you? And how did you take it incrementally, one step at a time or step by step?
I'm talking about the incrementally part. Like, I just started freaking out in my own head, right? Like, okay.
So you knew you were failing?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you have bowling class, like, you can't really, when you feel bowling class at a community college, it's probably a pretty good indicator that you might want to do something with your life. And I was like, okay, I've always been into guns and military equipment. I'm going to join the Army. Even though the first time I joined the Army and I failed my first drug test at MEPS, that's a whole different story. That's, I meant that was planned, but which still haunts me on my security clearance. And I'm not saying do that. I'm not advocating for doing that. But when I decided it, I was all in. I was like, this is what I have to do. And if I don't apply myself and go with this mentality I've just chosen of being positive and knowing that no matter what happens, no matter what, I will always end up on top. And there's some risk there too, because I am not recklessly driven. If I have a goal in mind, I will drive towards that, and I forget everything else around me until I accomplish what I want to accomplish. So I have to also be aware of that, and I am. It doesn't always help, right? I'll work 24 hours a day sometimes if I have to, but I've gotten better going towards those goals. But
once you have that mindset, like literally nothing can stop you. Like, this is my 30th surgery I just had. I'm about to have 31st surgery on my hip. Which I think me and Jimmy are going to be brothers in hip surgery here pretty soon. You got to take it, and you got to be positive about it. You just got to know that at the end of the day, you're going to dominate. And if you truly can visualize what it is that you want to achieve, and you realize that there are going to be obstacles, but you're going to conquer them, but you're going to get there, then you'll always get there somehow. You might take some branches, right? But you know that at the end of the day, you're going to always end up on top. And some help, yeah. You can't ever be too cool for that, because you can't do things by yourself all the time, even though sometimes that's kind of like what we want to do.
Yeah, it goes back to just asking for advice, mentorship, and I've had quite a few good ones. That's honestly why I think I'm at where I'm at, just because of the people that I've surrounded myself with. Some of them grabbed me and pulled me into their circle, and I'm very thankful for them, because, like, I mean, I don't have a perfect past either, so just managed to get to where I'm at because of those folks, honestly.
And I want to hit on this real quick too. Like, even in our careers where we had mental mindsets and we've been successful, right? Like, we make mistakes all the time, right? Look at my team starting time. I was just having a CPX or a workshop, a CPX workshop with our cadre today. I'm like, look, guys, a lot of the stuff I'm telling you is not because I did it right, but let me share this with you and be honest with you. Like, here's the stuff I did incorrectly. Here's the stuff I did correctly that I believe I did correctly. Here's all the things I've seen, vice versa. But we've had the opportunity at this point to make the mistakes and learn them, right? It's kind of negligent on our part to not share that with people, whether they want to listen to it or not, right? So I think it's pretty important to just say, like, we didn't get here because we were perfect either, right? We got here because of perseverance and then being able to course correct, in my opinion.
I think that I sum that up in a great quote from Arthur Bishop in The Mechanic, the movie The Mechanic. And that's, good judgment comes from experience, and a lot of that comes from bad judgment. So I think that's a great way to put it, is a lot of the learning comes from your trials and tribulations. But once you learn, you again, as special operations people, God forbid, we are never going to try to make that mistake again. And imparting that learning experience on the people around us is huge.
It's that growth mindset, right? Like, now, don't live in a no-fail environment. Don't do dumb shit over and over again, right? But, okay, you did this thing. It's okay, but learn from it. And not only better yourself, but then better everybody around you and the organization. And that's the important thing, right? They look at the definition of leadership by the Army. It's provide purpose, direction, motivation, and improve the organization, which I think that's that last step we miss a lot. But it's important too. How do you take your experiences where you failed and apply that to all four of those things?
But one of the things that I always try to do is, when the guys in my formation make a mistake, there's no way I can punish them, because I've probably made that same mistake before and I'd be a total hypocrite. So it's more of a lot of just talking, mentorship, advising. But like Chuck said, I made those mistakes prior, so it's okay, and I'm okay with that too.
So, Chuck, Jimmy, what is it that sets Army Special Operations Forces apart?
Just to put it in perspective, we got Civil Affairs, CA, and PSYOP within what we do here at SWCC. Within the SOCOM toolbox, you got special mission units, right? Extremely good at what they do, best in the world. But they are designed for a specific thing, to do very politically sensitive missions that are surgical in nature, and they do them very well. But they're very expensive to use. There's not a whole lot of them, and they're designed for short duration usage. We have heavier hitting elements, like we have our SEALs. They operate in platoon-size elements. Range Regiment, also extremely good at what they do. A little bit bigger, but also they're larger, and they are more expensive to utilize than we are. But they're very good at what they do within that realm. For us, like, a lot of people argue that, hey, we should follow the SEAL training model, which is a very good model, right, for what they do, where they go in, they'll reconstitute as a SEAL platoon, and they go through this pipeline, and they have a lot of resources, and most of their training is run for them up until, they reach their end state, they're validated, and they go off to combat, which would be awesome for us to have. But I would say what also sets us apart is we don't have those resources available to us, so we're the only element, at least in the Army, that we have to come up and conceptualize, plan for, train, and execute at the lowest level, at the detachment level, 12 guys. You don't go to an infantry unit and have all the privates come together and come up with a plan, right? You don't go to the Ranger Regiment and have
all these guys have to complain. You don't go to SMU and have like the 6.5 and 4 actually come up with the plans, right? They're working on what they have to be good on, and they're very good at that. But for us on the detachment, we have to do it at a very low level, and we have to do it with very minimal resources. So we have to figure out how to do we have to figure out how to train on an impossible amount of tasks just to where we deploy back in the rear. And I think that's what actually sets us apart. So when we deploy, we're expected to do things with a low American footprint for a low amount of money, for a longer duration, right? And solve problems that are seemingly impossible, right? As CA Civil Affairs and PsyOps, I don't need much. You give me a commander's intent, you give me a mission and a commander's intent, and maybe some boots because walking on gravel barefoot sucks, and I'll accomplish the world, right? I'll figure out anything, and I don't need much to do it. But because we go through this whole training pipeline in the rear, we have to figure out how to do all these things with nothing. That in itself sets us up for success. So when we actually deploy, you give us something impossible. It's very ambiguous, like conduct special operations. And oh, by the way, you have nothing to do it with. We can figure out how to do that. It's this pirate ship theory that we always give,
Tell me about the pirate ship theory.
We're on this nasty pirate ship, and it's just at least for SF, you're 12 guys, 120-man crew, totally different culture. They're probably not showering, and maybe even not using toilet paper. You don't know, but we're out there. It's not very sexy, and you're out there for a while. And while you're floating out to your mission, there's a nice Navy destroyer that comes by, and guys are suntanning out on the deck, and they're flipping you off, and it's like one of your SMUs, right? And it's very expensive. They're cool. They go in, they're going to do a very good job. They're going to hit their target. They're going to come back. They're suntanning again on the way back, and they're flipping us off as we're still sailing in there. Off to our right, you get that battleship that comes by. Again, a bunch of people on the deck, flipping you off. They go in, they hit their target, do a very good job of it because they're awesome. They come back, they got a lot of firepower, and we're just still sailing in there. 12 soldiers. We're going to be there for a while. It's not going to be, it's not going to be what's considered sexy or super always direct action, but we're going to go in there, we're going to get the job done, and that boat's not going to cost very much. We're not going to have very many Americans on the ground, and we're going to be able to accomplish a lot of stuff out there. And then we'll sail back 6 months, 8 months, year-long deployments sometimes.
Pirate ships working through the locals, through the indigenous force, right?
Locals, right?
That language and culture training that James was talking about, but that's the ability to develop rapport and establish relationships with those local leaders to do the job on our behalf, so that we can continue to advise with a minimal U.S. footprint, which is obviously less expensive to deploy overseas, easier to get into country.
It's an indirect approach, right? It's
absolutely.
Like one of the soft imperatives, but the indirect approach, like we go somewhere and we influence and manipulate the environment around us for mission accomplishment. That's what we do. Like we don't necessarily have to go kick in the door, do it ourselves, but we take the environment and we warp it. We warp the environment around us, and that's what it is. For not a whole lot of money, not a whole lot of Americans on the ground.
Dirty deeds done dirt cheap.
That's it. Dirty, and if you don't want to do that, that's fine. Like, you can go do a different job. But if you want to do and I think that's powerful. The dirty deeds done dirt cheap. Yep. You will get to do incredible things that are enduring, right?
Yep.
To kind of round out our conversation here, so hey, we've got you guys here in Pineland Underground. Pineland again is the fictional country where all of our Army Special Operations students get to deploy to here in North Carolina, the greater Fort Bragg area, and I think it encompasses 17 counties throughout North Carolina. Can you guys share a story about your time in Pineland, going through Robin Sage, or any of your time here in the Special Forces qualification course?
My story is just Robin Sage, so I didn't realize that at the time how phenomenal of a lane that I had in Robin Sage.
And Robin Sage is that culmination exercise at the end of the Special Forces pipeline, right?
Correct. And I was at E4. I was at 18 X-ray. This is around 2004 time frame. So I had a phenomenal captain as our team leader. He kind of took charge of us because there was a lot of 18 X-ray. So we didn't know a lot about the Army, but we knew a little. But positive mindset that we had, he kind of like grabbed hold of that, and he led us into our lane. So each team goes through an extremely long infill. It's painful. The weight on your back is a lot, typically over 100 pounds. So we got Richard Petty's lane.
The race car driver.
The race car.
The the NASCAR legend, Richard Petty.
Yeah, the king. It started out in the middle of the day, and we did everything. So we flew. Yeah, the king. We walked or rucked.
Yes, that's the lane I'm talking about. Where
And
it's
then-
just like 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, it was a day and a half.
Planes, trains, and automobiles
yeah.
to get into Pineland.
We got in the back of a box truck. It was a little bit of everything. But anyway, so it's the middle of the night. We're feeling sorry for ourselves. The wait, like I said, is extremely excruciating on the backs. So we walk into this house. We don't, like, in this yard, I guess. We don't know it's Richard Petty's house. So we push forward, and our cadre gives us, the mission. Hey, you will steal that flatbed truck, and then here's your coordinates on where you're gonna go. So a couple of us push forward. There's keys in it, so we take the flatbed, and we start slowly backing it out. Everyone piles on in the back, and at that point, Richard Petty walks out on the front steps. He has a shotgun in hand. He blasts off a couple rounds, and we took off. We took off down the road, and then obviously made it to our Robin Sage, our G base. But that's my story. It was pretty cool seeing someone of that caliber that wants to give back to the regiment, even though he wasn't part of it. But he just thought that we were such a great unit that he wanted to give back, and he ended up coming out to our lane at the end, and he gave us a bunch of autograph stuff. Obviously, the instructors took all of it and didn't let us get any of it, but we still got to see him and go from there. So that it was pretty cool. And like I said, I didn't realize at the time that I had such a good lane. But you talk to your peers after, and then you talk to, guys within the company years later, and you because stories like this always come up, and no one has had that experience that I had. I also got to buy a 160 mortar rounds at a Hardee's, where I bought a big Western burger. I supersized it, and I paid $100 on. No kidding. And
Yeah, but you're really hungry.
I was
starving.
starving.
You're so hungry at that point because
I was starving. But the fact that I got to use a $100, which is the currency in Pineland,
the fictitious Pineland monetary currency,
and I paid the cashier of Hardee's this $100, this Monopoly money, and she gave me a big Western burger, and I stuffed my face. But those are my two stories from this age.
Chuck, you got anything?
You got one story.
Yeah,
it's
tell
not
me
quite
about it.
as cool as that. But I will say, like, with that, in retrospect, like, the impact the Q course has on you, the journey through all the phases, and especially Robin Sage is pretty incredible, right? Because you're talking about, I had this super heavy backpack. I mean, just think of the Star Course. It's ridiculous, right? A super heavy backpack, and you're just trying to find your way in the dark. Spider webs at face level, and I don't care how badass you are. When you hit a spider web at face level, you're a
little girl.
Yeah, you are screaming, like, no matter what. It's the worst. Like, I don't have a whole lot of fears in life. Getting out of the Army, heights, and spider webs at face level is pretty much it, right? And I was on a mountain team for a long time, too. Like, yeah, I've done a lot of lying to God on the side of a mountain. Like, man. God,
So that's walking into a spider web where it surrounds your
banana
face in a
spiders.
cocoon.
Banana
Yeah,
spiders.
it's nighttime. You walk into, you know exactly what it is, and you just start trying to
You're
scrape
like,
it off your face.
Yeah, you're running, you're still, like, screaming. Yeah, it's
How'd
the
you
worst.
scream?
It's maybe not that monotone, but all right. So back to this Robin Sage story. So we got blown out of our fire base because apparently we sucked.
Well, that's what happens, though.
Yeah, it happens to everybody,
It's
right?
training.
And it was a super long walk where the cadre had planned out that we wouldn't make it there in time because he planned it out to be impossible, which we made it there in time, which he got really pissed off about, which I got in trouble for. But anyway, we'll get to that in a second. So he put this person with us. He was supposed to take all the people that were attached and trucked them out there. But one guy's like, no, this guy sucks, and he's going to carry the M60. He's going with you. And this guy was like way out of shape, kept falling down and crying. And at one point in time, we were on this farmer's field, and he had an AD with this M60. And the farmer, like, it wasn't part of the scenario. This dude just came out with a gun and started shooting at us. So we were hauling ass, and as we were running, we hit this electric fence. And at this point in time, we're pretty demotivated because we had all this stuff on, and this guy made us take all the kitchen gear too. So we had mermites and stuff strapped out to the back of our packs. So we had like 130 pounds on of mermites and kitchen gear and stuff rattling around.
He was like, man, if you guys don't make it there by 6 o'clock in the morning, like I don't know what's going to happen. And he gave us very specific rules. You couldn't take the railroad tracks, all this stuff. So we're moving, and I was put in charge of this movement. So I hit this electric fence, and I had my ruck in front of me because I was planning on climbing the fence. I didn't know it was electric. And then all of a sudden, I'm on one side of the fence, my ruck's on the other. It's electric. I'm like, man, I'm so unmotivated. And everybody's like unmotivated. So I just sit down, and everybody else sits down. And for some reason, I just start singing the Titanic theme song. The Titanic theme song, like near, far, and like everybody starts singing it for no reason. Right? And all of a sudden, everybody's motivation's up. We sing the whole song. We're like, all right, let's get up and let's conquer this. We get over the fence, and we actually made it to the pickup point by the pickup at 6 o'clock in the morning. Hauled ass, and the caddy was pissed. He brought me, he's like, there's no way you used the train tracks. How did you get here in time? You weren't supposed to be here till tomorrow. I'm going to fail you. I'm like, man, I don't know. Like, we were successful. Like, how am I in trouble for this, right? But yeah, so I attribute that to the Titanic theme song.
He was probably more upset that you all knew all the words to the Titanic theme song.
Maybe. But the reason why we started singing is because, there's a little piece of crap clock radio in the barracks, and you're doing all your planning and stuff, you're just sucking in those barracks, and that would play like back to back at the time for whatever reason, and it just is one of those things where
I think, again, so as we have guests here in Pineland Underground, teasing out some of those amazing stories from whatever the culmination exercise is that they participated in. But everybody has stories from Pineland, from their experiences here going through, the Special Forces, Civil Affairs, or PSYOP qualification
course. You'll do some amazing stuff out of Robin's Age, too. I mean, we had, like, people on boats with machine guns, and we were doing raids on $1 million houses, and unbelievable stuff.
As we kind of wrap this up, really, Jimmy, I wanted to kind of turn it over to you before I turn it over to Chuck. What would be your imparting words on our listeners today, focusing on some of the themes we've discussed in this episode?
I'd just like to highlight a quote that I just recently read in a book about culture, because there's talk about, hey, there's a culture problem in our SOF or SOF in general. I don't think there is. I think there's been some egregious mistakes by a few select individuals, but doesn't mean that there's actual culture problem within the regiment. But the quote goes, culture drives expectations and beliefs. Expectations and beliefs drive behavior. Behavior drives habits. Habits create the future. It all starts with culture. I was actually talking to a couple buddies this weekend we're talking Clemson football, for example. This guy hated Clemson football. He thought Dabo Swinney is a terrible coach. And my thoughts are that when Dabo first started being successful with those Clemson football teams, he was winning off culture and not talent, because he created that environment where everyone's got a job, everyone's got a purpose. Whatever your purpose is, if you're the starting quarterback or you're riding the bench, you have a purpose. But that culture was also a positive culture, which he has a very positive mindset. I feel like with good culture and a positive mindset, man, you can do just about anything.
I love that. Great way to wrap that up. I completely agree. And culture is the foundation for a successful organization, especially here in our Army Special Operations. Chuck, over to you. What final words would you like to impart on our listeners?
Yeah, I just want to say, hey, if you disagree with things in the podcast, man, look me and Jimmy Dauteuil up, or even Major Tuttle, and let's have a conversation, because we don't claim to be, the purveyors of knowledge or to know everything, and we're all about challenging our own opinions too. I think it's kind of a lost art in general in society today. Is people can have different opinions, and you should be able to debate that with somebody and walk away respecting each other's opinions. So if you differ on opinion, let's have that conversation. Or if you have something that you want to bring up that you think needs to be messaged to higher, right? Hey, bring it up. Like the E9s in this regiment, we're the ones that are going to advocate for you, because the reality is, you got CSMs and whatnot, but we can't make you 10. Pretty hard to fire us. So, bring up what you want to say in a respectful, tactful way, but bring it up, and man, let's have that conversation so we can bring that up for you. And most of us that I know, we're all about taking what it is that soldiers in the regiment think and being able to articulate that to those in charge. So please do that. And if you have problems and you have complaints and think things need to change, but you want to keep it to yourself, don't do that. don't flood our inbox with a bunch of weird stuff, but come up to us in a meaningful way and bring that up so we can have that discussion. That's really what I got. Like, don't view us as the enemy or one step removed. 'Cause that's just the way it happens. Once you make E9, everybody thinks you got an ulterior motive. Everybody thinks that everybody above them is out of the loop and they're too far removed, and everybody below you doesn't really understand. But the reality is that's not exactly true most of the time. So, yeah, look us up, hit us up, and let's have a conversation.
No, I love it. Great closing comments. Sergeant Major, thanks so much. So again, Major James Blackburn, Sergeant Major Jimmy Dauteuil, and Sergeant Major Chuck Ritter, thanks for spending time with us in Pineland Underground today. Listeners, tune in next week. Episodes will be airing every other Friday. Look forward to having you. Thanks, and we'll see you again next time. Cheers. Thanks for tuning in to Pineland Underground. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join us next time as we explore more critical topics from the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and School, the Special Operations Center of Excellence. I'm your host, Major Bobby Tuttle, and we'll see you next time in Pineland Underground.